Welcome, Drink with James, episode 136. Obviously, I have escaped the confines of our conference room. I am at the beautiful Center Bar in Columbus Circle. And this place is great. If you are ever in this area, God forbid, let's say you are walking through Central Park and you want to drink, there's actually not a lot of great places around to do that, especially with a view of Central Park and Columbus Circle. This place is great. It's right in the mall, but it doesn't feel like you are in a mall. It's on the 4th floor. They make a great Manhattan, and it's 1 p.m. on a Monday, but it is important to uphold your personal brand, and sometimes that means you have to drink in Manhattan at 1 p.m. But honestly, if you are in the area, you need a good place to drink. This is great. They got a piano behind us. They're playing music a lot of nights, and I want to thank our clients for extending the invite and getting me out of the office for a couple hours to film here. We took the train up here, which is not my general preferred mode of transportation, but was the fastest. And we passed a Fashion Week activation on the way out for Stitcher Fixer. I don't know what the hell it's called, but they had some strange red carpet in the subway. I'm not totally sure what's going on, but I did see Grace Atwood was there an hour before, so I know they were doing some Fashion Week thing. Which gets me thinking about Fashion Week in general. We are in the throes of it. This is not as popular, obviously, as the season in September because the weather sucks and the clothes are harder to see when it's 15 degrees outside. But, us consumers, us normals, these, people that aren't invited to the shows are subjected to quite a bit of coverage and quite a bit of Insta story vomit and bloat. We're getting the perforated edges in the top, 50 dots with people's stories. And, I think it's difficult because you, as an influencer, I know you have to balance wanting to stay busy and go to as many shows as possible with not overwhelming your audience and, not creating something that's interesting or captivating. And I think that I would be super interested to see from influencers how much fall off they're getting on their stories. I don't find the, Fashion Week vomit to be super interesting. I think that if I was an influencer and I'd gone a lot of times, I would seriously think about how I could do that in a way that was, interesting and mindful. It feels like people are just throwing up stories from the shows because they're there and there's not a lot of thought behind it. And again, I don't find it hugely interesting. I think that there's probably a pretty compelling case to be made for scaling back, if not the number of shows you go to, the number of shows that you are talking about. I might encourage influencers to, fire up their blogs back up and maybe cover the shows more fully on their blogs and less fully on the Instagram. I just don't know a huge amount of people following influencers that find this stuff interesting. And I definitely have seen people on Instagram complaining about all the Fashion Week content. And, what sucks is that it's a month. And I also just feel like half the influencer community was in Paris for Couture Week. So really, I've already been hit with Fashion Week for weeks. And then it was men's before that. And so it's 6 weeks of constant Fashion Week content. And I just don't think it's super interesting. And I think that it would behoove you all who are now potentially listening to this and you're in the middle of Fashion Month to really think about quality over quantity and to edit those stories down to something that is compelling and interesting for consumers, not just for you, and not just ticking a box of saying, okay, I got invited to that show, I posted from that show, I'm all good. Let's get into the questions first. Now, question number one is, what's the proper way to drink in Manhattan? That's not question number one, but the only way to drink in Manhattan is up. I personally don't get into too much of the what whiskey do I want? Is it rye or bourbon? For me, Manhattan's a Manhattan. I know that maybe people that have like actual taste buds can tell the difference. I can certainly tell the difference between a good one and a bad one, but I leave it to the bartender if it's going to be rye or bourbon, and I leave it to the bartender what kind of bourbon that they're going to put in there, because they know more than I do. I'm good at drinking them. They're good at making them. Important to let people do what they're good at. Question number 1 is, what's the most important KPI in influencer marketing? Well, I'll answer this question in 2 ways. The most important KPI for the vast majority of brands is going to be, did it move the needle? Did it sell anything? Now, that is the most difficult KPI to chase as well. And I think it's not entirely realistically. I don't think it's entirely realistic. I've been on Instagram since day one. As I've said many times, every purchase decision I've made is heavily influenced by the platform, but I never buy things directly from the platform. So tracking sales through Instagram is always going to be a trailing indicator of what's actually happening, not a leading one. So when we talk to brands, and it's important, I think, for influencers to understand how to talk to brands about this, because when executing a campaign, they certainly are going to want you to report on some KPIs, but it's important to make sure that the KPI matches the campaign. So what we do is, when we talk to brands, we tell them that they have to pick a keystone KPI. So what is the thing that they're going to look at, the most important KPI, and we make sure that that keystone KPI corresponds with the point of the campaign. Meaning, if it's a brand awareness campaign that is meant to create beautiful content and get more people to know who the brand is, then sales is a pretty terrible KPI for that, because you don't find out about a brand and become a customer of it in the same interaction. And so for a brand awareness campaign, the right KPI would probably be engagement and reach. Whereas on a bottom of the funnel campaign, something for a brand everyone knows about, and maybe you're introducing a sale or a special edition, then the KPI might be clicks on your Insta story or blog, and whatever the potential sales are from that as well. So important to know what's the campaign's point, and make sure the KPI that you're choosing it corresponds. If a brand was trying to drive interest in a new product, the KPI for that might be the conversation that's happening in your comments, people asking product questions, the DMs that you're getting about it. As an influencer, you should be able to take the data that's coming in from a post and help to tell a story. But it is important, I think, in the brand work that you do, to ask them before it starts, what's the KPIs that you're tracking, and what's your keystone KPI? What's the main thing that you absolutely need to happen for this campaign to be successful? Because if you don't understand how they are quantifying success on a campaign, then how could you possibly hope to be successful in that campaign? I think a lot of companies say that we want brand awareness, and we want sales, and we want click-throughs, and we want great content, and we want all of these things. And all of that is possible across multiple posts. All of that is not possible in a single. And it's why we ask for the keystone KPI, the main KPI above all others, so that we know, yes, we will try and touch as many points as possible, and kind of speak to the KPIs that are important to you, but we know the one that is make or break, ride or die, this thing absolutely has to happen, so that we can brief and create content that kind of meets that challenge. So question number 2, what advice do you have for someone who is hesitant to be vulnerable on Instagram? I think this comes from a conversation we had about, vulnerability being a good way to create a relationship with your audience. And it is it's a great way to do that. It's also probably the hardest way to do that personally, because opening yourself up and being vulnerable is, by nature difficult. Look, if that's not natural for you, I don't think that it's going to work for you, And so while I think you have to look at yourself and say, am I hesitant to be vulnerable, or do I feel incapable of doing that? There might be wounds that are too fresh that you can't talk about. There may be things that you don't yet totally understand about yourself that you can't talk about. That's okay. You do not in any way have to open yourself up completely to your audience. You don't have to do it at all. It's just a arrow in the quiver. It's just a way to build a relationship with an audience. I wouldn't say that I am ever vulnerable on Drink with James. I'm not really telling y'all anything about my life. I'm not sharing any of my big struggles. I feel like I have some sort of relationship with the people that watch the show, and I think that I have heard that that's felt from the other side, and that's done without vulnerability. So again, I think it's important to know, anyone you're getting advice from, that not everything works for all people, and you have to find something that's going to work for you. And I think that a core tenet of the show, and something we've talked about all the time, is just trying things, And so doing something once doesn't mean you have to do it 100 or 1,000 times. And, starting to peel back the layers and starting to show your audience a little bit behind the curtain of who you are and what you're feeling, what you're struggling with. That is a process that can be unrolled slowly over months or years. It doesn't have to happen all at once. You don't have to say, hey guys, I want to share the 10, biggest insecurities I have about myself. That's not how you have to get into it, and that may not even work. So, start slow, and if it doesn't feel natural, or if it doesn't make you happy, or it's not helping you in any way, then I wouldn't do it. I think that the argument for being vulnerable is probably that by opening yourself up, you can realize that other people have been through the same thing, that, by sharing your experiences, you can start to build a community around you that also share those experiences, or feel a certain amount of empathy for you about those experiences. But, by no means do you have to do it. So this is not an equation. I think we've said often on the show that, this is not a thing where you say, okay, then I get to do this and this comes out. You could feel like you're being vulnerable, and people could just say, well, I don't care. I'm here for pretty pictures, not, your life story. Each account is different. Each life is different. And it's best to do what you feel like works for you. Yeah. I mean, I'd say probably the worst thing you can have, other than open mic stand-up comedy, is forced vulnerability. That's going to seem not great. Okay, so the last question is a hilarious one, which is, what do I think of fake sponsored posts? I mean, the TLDR answer to this is I think they're insane. I think it's insane that it's happening. But I guess on a level I understand it. I think that there is, again, so much attention put into this space, and I think being legitimized and validated by a brand is a big part of it. And so there is a trend now where people are pretending to do sponsored posts. It's kind of crazy. They're giving free advertising, doing hashtag ad on posts that were not sponsored. This actually happened to us in a campaign. I won't say for what client, but we had a few influencers jump in and hashtag sponsored, hashtag ad. And they did, they executed on the brief. They did kind of made the post look like the other posts. And I believe we reached out and had them remove that. The brand did not think it was cute or funny. Certainly brands are anxious to get a lot of organic content from influencers. And I think that it is one of the best ways to get attention from a brand you want to work with, is to do, free posts for them, and to do posts that are interesting and compelling. and tell a good brand story, I think maybe the worst way to get their attention is to pretend to be on a fucking campaign that you're not on. Like, that is in no way, shape, or form going to do any good for you. It potentially is just going to lead to some embarrassment. I think any influencer doing that, you know, if I'm an influencer and I'm watching it, it could be frustrating that I would just shake your head and move on. I don't think that the people doing this are you know, have much staying power in the industry, because you have to think about it from the brand side. If a post, let's say someone says they do a sponsored post for a brand but don't, and that post or that person has a post on their account that is creates some sort of uproar, and now people are like, hey, this brand is advertising with this influencer who just said this really insensitive thing a week ago, and it becomes a big story, and they say, wait, no, we never advertised with them. Like, this is a big deal for brands, and who they pick as their brand ambassadors is a big deal for them. And we do fairly thorough checks for brand safety to make sure that our brands aren't working with influencers that are caught up in some sort of controversy. And I encourage anyone who's ever thought about doing it, thought it would be funny, thought it would get the brand's attention, to stay as far as humanly possible away from doing fake sponsored posts. It is pathetic, it is dumb, and it will do you no good. I don't think people are doing it as a growth tactic. I think they're doing it to try and like spit in the eye of other influencers and say, I got this campaign, is what I think. I think it's more about flexing and pretending you have a relationship that you don't than it is trying to get the brand's approval or attention, which is even more pathetic. If you're faking getting campaigns to flex on other influencers, like, that's just so sad. I think that maybe you should like seek some professional help. You should reevaluate your relationship with the platform and reevaluate your reasons for publishing on it, because it's not cute, and it's not funny, and it's just kind of sad. So I want to thank our friends again at the Center Bar. Again, encourage y'all, if you're in the Columbus Circle area, pop up to the 4th floor, grab yourself a Manhattan, and look at the view for an hour or so. You will not be disappointed. Cheers.